Hello there, future human attendees. My name is Niamh Shaw, and I'm absolutely delighted that I have been invited to have a chat with Joan Higginbotham as a space enthusiast myself. Joan Higginbotham is an electrical engineer and a former NASA astronaut, and she flew on board the Space Shuttle Discovery mission STS-116 as a mission specialist, and is the third African-American woman to go into space, following in the footsteps of Stephanie Wilson and Mae Jemison back in 1992 with me. Good afternoon, Joan. How are you? You're very welcome to Future Human.
Well, I'm well, Niamh. Thank you so very much for having me. I hope you're doing well as well.
Yes, we are, and I hope you're safe and well where you are in the US. I hope it's all good and fine over there. So let's get straight into it, will we? So, Joan, can you tell us, how did you originally get into human space exploration, that sector? Because you qualified as an electrical engineer, so how did you make that transition?
So it was really interesting. I did get my degree in electrical engineering, and really my plan was to work for IBM. Since I had interned for them for several summers, it just seemed like a good fit. They were a good company. They considered me a good employee, but they weren't really hiring engineers. And by some twist of fate, one day I get a call from a NASA manager when I'm in my dorm room, and he asks me if I want to move to Florida to launch space shuttles. And I'm like, who is this? Because I had not applied to NASA. And honestly, Niamh, I was not a big NASA or space fan enthusiast. I know that's hard to believe, but I wasn't. And I think he kind of sensed my hesitation. I got to go to Florida, and I saw a space shuttle, and I saw the launch pad, and it just looked like something out of Star Wars. And I'm thinking, hey, I will give this 5 years and see where it goes. And 20 years later, I finally left. But it was the best decision of my life, but not one that I necessarily planned for.
And so what was your plan then? Computer science, was it?
No, it wasn't completely
that kind of sector.
Science. It was electrical engineering, but just with IBM. I had done 2 summers with them in an electrical engineering capacity, and it just seemed like the natural transition after university.
It's incredible, isn't it, that opportunity just came when so many other people are, they that's their dream for their life, and I mean, obviously, you did an awesome job on it, so it was a good decision, and very wise on the person that offered you that opportunity. So then what happened next? Was it what did you think about kind of working then at the Kennedy Space Center? Were you at all concerned about the Challenger disaster that had happened before that? Did that enter your mind at all?
So the Challenger disaster actually entered into my mind when I was being offered the job. So the one thing that really kind of made me stop and really think about this, well, actually there were 3, but the first major one was Challenger. So this was 1987, and Challenger had just happened in 1986. And I'm thinking, is this a really good move on my part when there's been such a catastrophe, basically? And then they were asking me to move 1,000 miles away from my family and friends to Florida. And I just didn't know if that was really going to be a wise decision on my part. But like I said, I saw the shuttle, and I saw the launch pads, and it just blew my mind, literally. And I said, if they're silly enough to let me work on this, then I'm going to go work on this.
Was it a difficult transition? Was the pace there a lot different from what you had been used to? Because they say that about the space sector. It's like, what? Things happen so fast.
So it was very different for me because my previous experience was in corporate America with IBM. And so this was totally different. It was a different industry. I knew nothing about NASA or the space program. I was not very well versed in it. So everything was really new, but I was a young engineer straight out of university, and I was excited and happy to have my first job. So it could have been the worst thing in the world, and I would have still enjoyed it, but it was fascinating. I got to meet astronauts, and I got to work on the space shuttle. And a year after I started, they had the first flight launch post-Challenger. And Niamh, oh my gosh, I walked out of my office. I could see
Really?
the launch pads from my office. And I stood up there with all the other people and I watched that countdown and I nearly just bawled my eyes out. It was so amazing feeling just the thunder in your chest as the shuttle was taking off the launch pad. I felt like an extremely proud American, you know, even though I'd only worked on the shuttle for like a half hour. I was still very proud of the work I did.
Yeah, to be part of something that magnificent and so incredible that we can propel humans safely off the planet. It's always incredible. So you're working at Kennedy Space Center, but that's one thing. But then somebody else puts another question in your head about actually applying to become an astronaut. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I thought that I already had the ultimate job, you know, shuttles, astronauts, pretty much what more could there be? And I never considered
Uh-huh.
the path of an astronaut because in my mind they were everything that I wasn't. And the gentleman that I was working for obviously saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and gently persuaded, shall we say, me to apply to be an astronaut. And I applied literally just to placate him and not really expecting anything to come of it. And that year they had 6,000 people apply. 120 of us received an interview. So I interviewed, I went through the week-long process. They did psychological and medical evaluations on us. I had a background check to make sure that I wasn't a bad person. And about 6 months later, after all this time of waiting on pins and needles, I get the call. Unfortunately, my call wasn't good. That of the 15 people they selected of 6,000, I was not one of them. And so my dreams were a little bit dashed. My feelings were a little bit hurt. But I decided, you know what, I got so close. I have to see what I can do. Maybe the next go round. So I went back and got another graduate degree. I went through the whole process again, and lo and behold, I was accepted the next time.
So perseverance is the word definitely there. You just didn't give up.
Absolutely perseverance. And just to give you some semblance of how that process has changed now. So that was back in 1996. This last astronaut selection, 18,000 people applied to be astronauts. I was like, thank God I did it when I did, because I'd never get selected today. I'm sure the competition is just absolutely fierce.
Yeah. Do you think seeing Mae Jemison do it first before you in 1992, do you think that was something that inspired you, or did it at all? Did you reflect on it in any way to see that women from African American women had done it, and it's important that we have these women that are our tent poles for all of us that identify with our own groups of people?
It was really interesting because Mae was selected in 1987, and I started in 1987, and I got to meet her shortly thereafter. And I was just, I heard she was in my building, and I go running down the hall to meet her, and it was fascinating. I mean, first of all, you don't meet a lot of astronauts. I benefited from the fact that I worked at the Space Center, so I got to meet some. But then how many African Americans, and then how many African American women? So it was just, I was enamored, and I'm sure I just tripped all over my feet speaking with her. She is truly an inspiration, and she's wicked smart if you ever get a chance to meet her. But you have to remember, at that time, I was not focused on being an astronaut. I was happy launching astronauts on shuttles and working on it. So I didn't look at her as an inspiration from that viewpoint of me wanting to be one. I looked at her as an inspiration for her being a woman who broke through the ceiling and being the first, which is incredibly different for anybody who is a first of anything. So that's how she inspired me. Like I said, my inspiration to apply, if you will, was through my boss at the time, who highly encouraged me to apply.
That was great that he did that. So what was the journey like then for you? You know, so you applied to be an astronaut and you get it, and then getting to your own mission. How many years was that, and how long did that take?
You know, it was actually 10 years. So we had a very large class. There were 44 people in our class, and we had started transitioning to building the International Space Station and taking on international partners. So it took a while for everyone to get assigned. I was actually assigned in 2003, 7 years after I had gotten selected, and basically 5 years after I was eligible for a flight. And as you know, Columbia happened February 1st, 2003. Our flight was scheduled for September of that year, if I remember correctly. And because of the accident and the fact that they had to come up with these new processes and so forth and so on, our mission was delayed 3 years. So in all, it took 10 years for me to fly. And I tell you what, when we got off and launched that shuttle that night, one of my classmates was also with me on that flight. We were tickled pink. We just didn't know what to do because we had waited such a long time to realize our dream.
It's incredible. You know, if anyone deserves to have that opportunity, Joan, it was you after all that time. So from all that, I mean, that's quite a unique experience to see the Earth from a distance, and I'm sure you've reflected on that many times. So for us that haven't yet had that privilege, what did you learn from that, and your whole experience about that mission and getting the chance to fly to space?
So two things were really very poignant for me when I was on the mission. The first one is about the second day. My commander called me up to the flight deck and he looked at me. He said, "Sit down." He's strapped in. I was like, "What did I do?" He says, "Look out the window." I had my head buried in the shuttle, getting all my stuff ready for when we were going to dock with the International Space Station so I could be ready to go. And he's like, "Just sit down and enjoy the view." And we were flying so that if my fist is a ball, we were seeing about an eighth of the curvature of the Earth. And we fly at 17,800 miles per hour. I think that's like 28,000 kilometers per hour. And we go around the world one time every 90 minutes. So in that 90 minutes, you know, we're seeing 45 minutes of sunlight, which is day in the world, and then 45 minutes of night. So we get to see 16 sunrises and sunsets every 24 hours. So as I was sitting there looking out the window, it was about to be daylight, and the sun just burst up over the horizon, and I could actually see the atmosphere, which at my vantage point looked to be about this big. You know, it was just very thin from my vantage point, and I'm thinking, holy cow! I was like, this is the only thing that is keeping everything on Earth from extinction. And I thought right then and there, we really need to be very protective of Mother Earth because it is very fragile. And this is the only place that we have to live right now. So we really need to take care of it. So that was the first thing that just stood out to me. Then about 7 days later, finally had some free time. And I floated over to the Russian segment that at the time had about the only view on space station. And I just kind of plastered my face against the window and I was watching the world go by. And as we were coming over the Middle East, I just saw all this stuff kind of coming up. And I thought, you know, somebody is bombing somebody else. And on our mission, we had such a diverse crew. We had 7 nationalities. We spoke 5 languages. We represented 4 countries and 3 space agencies. And it dawned on me, Niamh, when I saw this discord below, and then I saw the 10 of us with all our different colors and backgrounds and experiences getting along to accomplish this one goal. My thought wasn't, as cliche as this sounds, why can't we all get along? Because we can do it in this tin can. Why can't we do it down on Earth where there is so much more space? So that was like the second most poignant thing that just, you know, it just it hit me like a ton of bricks as we were flying over the Middle East. Why can't we all get along?
No. And that's why people like yourself, Joan, are so valuable and so intriguing to us, because I think if everybody saw that view, maybe we'd have a different world. But you are the custodians of that viewpoint for us. So thank you very much for sharing that with us today, and wishing you continued success and stay safe and stay well. And maybe I'll be lucky to meet you in person one day when the pandemic passes. But that was fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.